We're live.
We're live. And my
And we're
glasses
giving
look
each
good
other
on me.
compliments.
And my glasses look great. All right.
Yes, they do.
I need new glasses.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to Blooped. It's Vanessa and
Vilas and
Marissa, our
Marissa.
special guest.
I'm going to give her a
Hello.
bigger introduction in just a second.
Yeah.
But first, Vanessa, where are you?
Okay, so I am in San Diego this week. Actually, I've been in San Diego for a couple of weeks and I've been recording from Hair Hub. So if y'all are listening and you're in like Orange County or Temecula or even DC, we have locations there. So it's a co-working space for female entrepreneurs. So it's an absolutely wonderful place. I was actually helpful in the beginning in terms of the design. So I have an extra special love for it here. So what's up with you? Where are you? You're at the ocean again.
I'm at this gorgeous ocean spot, or also known as my office, with a huge painting behind me.
Now you had a fun week this last week. I want to hear what yes, please tell us.
I had with Marissa one of the most really phenomenal experiences that I've had. 7 of us survivors that are associated with the End Child Marriage effort were invited by one of the organizations we work with, Unchained at Last, to go have this amazing workshop with the Moth and storytelling workshop, how to really get to the heart of it and how to deliver, how to curate what you want to say so that it paints a picture, how to open it where you get a hook, and how to create an arc, and then how to bring it all back together with bookends, where how you started kind of gets tied up neatly with a little bow at the end. And it was 2 very long, solid days of amazing workshopping. It was so good. And at the end of the second day, which would have been Sunday night, we went to a studio and we all recorded our speeches, and they'll be uploaded to Unchained at Last's website and used for social media, and we will share them.
That's amazing. So I've always wanted to be on the Moth, number one. I also take a workshop with them. So it sounds like they gave you a lot of structure and a lot of like support on how to convey a story without just blurting it, but just like giving it a message and a point.
So I'm gonna hand this in a second to Marissa because she had a slightly different experience than me. And what I went there with was a very isolated piece of my story that I wanted to deliver. And I could have even taken that bit of my story and isolated it further, but I wanted this whole part in there. And mine was directly connected to end child marriage. But other survivors, there are lifelong consequences of being a survivor, in general. And so everybody's sort of pivotal moment might not be the same as mine. Mm-hmm. Mine was where like the big thing happened, and theirs was where their big thing happened, because one of the survivors that we sat with didn't know she was a survivor until her therapist told her.
Wow.
And it's not, the facts backed it up. The therapist is like, do you see that you were a child when you got married?
So it's not we're like allowed to talk about.
But it's done and it's going out. So I don't think we're allowed to talk about it beforehand.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to share.
Is it like Fight Club? We're not allowed to talk about Fight Club?
That's okay. Yeah. So okay. So
it
that's
hasn't
interesting.
Come out yet, so we're not allowed to talk about it.
Come out yet. But but the experience, well, I mean, I can talk about mine.
Yes.
But my point is, like, not everybody even realizes they're in an abusive situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting bit in and of itself, where one day you wake up and you're realizing that you have been in this horror. And well, I was saying that as it relates to, I had already the bit, and other survivors might have had different things to share. And
Right.
so it was just interesting to pick it apart and decide what it is you want to share, and and how you want to share it, and what parts mean the most to you, and what specifically you want people to really take away from your story. You want to tell your experience, Marissa? You don't have to.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your experience if you want to share a little bit. You don't have to go into detail or like whatever you want, but I would just love to hear, because it sounds like you both are such passionate advocates. So this is just an awesome part of your journey.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, fundamentally, there's just a huge misunderstanding about domestic violence in general. But I think that the misunderstanding is really it's there's like many reasons why, but like for me, it was more like denial, because I knew that there was something not right. I knew there was something wrong, and I knew that my mother said, "You're getting married whether you like it or not." Like, that's an experience that I had that I can't ever, undo. It
And how old
happened.
were you? How old were you, Marissa?
And then after being married and being forced to stay married, those were all. I was 24 when I got married. I was 23 when I got engaged, I believe.
Okay.
I'm trying to think now. I think I was 23 when I got engaged, and then 24. Definitely 24 when I got married. But
we're having some connection issues, Marissa.
It wasn't until I saw Hulu's documentary called I Am a Child Bride. How about I turn off the fan? Maybe it's the fan.
No,
is that better?
It's the Wi-Fi, or
is that better?
Internet connection.
We can just continue and just see, but yeah. Do you have any other devices on the Wi-Fi right now, like your phone? Maybe just disconnect.
All right, let me see. I'll switch. I do. I'll go grab that.
I think it's interesting because it's so child marriage is a type of forced marriage. So it's not just the elimination of child marriage, it's the elimination of the coercion that happens where people are forced to be married. And child marriage just happens to be an especially egregious form of forced marriage.
Right.
But it happens. Arranged marriages. Oops. It looks like she's having her own.
She has the link, so hopefully she'll jump back in with us. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've seen, Marissa, on other podcasts and representing domestic violence. And so, she's back waiting to join. You wanna?
Okay. Awesome. And Greg just joined us. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
So her camera's off. Marissa, if you can hear us, your camera's off. So just turn that back on, if you will. She's been on other podcasts, you were saying.
Yeah, and she has a wealth of knowledge about the legal and certainly her own personal experience.
Yeah.
Hi
again.
Is that better?
Not really, but that's okay.
Is that better?
We'll keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep talking through it. It's okay. I thought maybe if it was just one device on Wi-Fi, it could help, but don't even worry.
Right, I have one more option.
I
have one more option.
Okay.
So our weekend of story crafting sort of led us on Monday morning. We were sitting and talking, and she was talking about it because we don't really have time at these things to just say, this is what I do in my life, and this is, because normally it's legislative stuff, protesting, testifying, and just writing letters and writing
Yeah.
testimony. And so sometimes we go to these things and we don't even have time to chat.
Yeah. So
Got
had you guys crossed paths in your advocacy work before?
Yeah, because we've been to a couple of things together.
Oh, cool. That's so awesome. Well, you ladies are changing the world, and certainly changing the world for younger women and girls. And that's so, so vitally important. I heard that California just, did they propose? They proposed it, but did it pass?
They passed a child marriage ban in the Senate. And for the first time in the history in all of the states, it was unopposed.
So let's just bring attention to this for a second. So this is 2026. California is one of the most modern, updated, civilized states, so to speak. Holy snot. It just unanimously passed. Unanimous, or was there any objection?
No, there were a few people that weren't there. I made a post on Facebook and Instagram about it, but there were a couple of people absent. So I don't know if that's technically called unanimous, but there was no objection.
No objection, but a couple of people weren't there. You go, whose pockets were they in? What was behind them to object, or who was behind them who objected? And why the hell would anybody object to banning child marriage? Anyways, the point is it's 2026 and this just passed. Newsom hasn't signed it yet, right, ladies?
Yeah, right.
But as a dad of two girls and a wonderful wife, you better hope that guy signs this.
He'll sign it.
He's got until the end of the month.
He's got what?
He'll sign it. Or we're coming for him. We're coming for him.
I think
I don't mean that in a threatening way, FYI.
No, but there's something here to say that it's 2026 and this just is passing. And we're still here holding our breath, hoping that a male governor is going to sign off on this. So fingers crossed.
Exactly.
So the reason, you guys met over the weekend, obviously. Vilas was so excited to tell me about Marissa and your amazing work that you're doing in the domestic violence space and educating. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about what that looks like for you. You also started, the Me Too Family Court movement. So tell us all about you.
So basically, just like I was trying to convey earlier before my shoddy Wi-Fi, basically, I think that a lot of people, I'm going to take out the word I think. I know for a fact, the evidence shows that the majority of victims of domestic violence are unaware that they are currently experiencing domestic violence. Domestic violence does not show up the way that it does in movies. The way that it shows up in our bodies, though, is really important for all women to be aware of. It shows up like confusion. It shows up like break up, get back together, to break up again, to, get back together again. There's, it takes about 7 to 10 times to leave an abuser. And that's what that is, that when you break up and get back together again, that person's probably in a domestic violence relationship. And it won't be until later when she has, gained some footing that she is like, oh, I was a domestic violence victim. And, depending on her personality or whatever circumstances are presented in her own life, how she deals with it.
Is there a moment that is there like a general moment where someone wakes up to like, oh my God, this is the situation I'm in? Is there something that happens typically?
So I'm just going to throw my own bit out here right now. I did not identify myself as a domestic violence survivor until I read a whole bunch of things a decade and some later and went, oh my God. So when I was in it, I could not see it.
Okay, that's what I was. So, but what woke you up to the fact that you were in that? You said, like,
I was miserable, but but also there was a lot of self-loathing, like, wow, you can't just live with this. You can't just tolerate this. You can't do this for the greater good. You can't just get along to get along.
so
And
you were really trying to convince yourself to stay for all these
absolutely.
noble kind of reasons.
And there's a certain amount of pride in that. Like, I've made this commitment and I knew this person when I got into the relationship, and I thought I was gonna, if I could be better, he'll be better. If I can show up and do all of the right things, he'll also. Then it won't be my fault that he punched the door. Like, that's where I go to.
Okay, so what if no one's punching a door or punching you in the face? What if the control or the disruption is someone who's very defensive, someone who's deflective, with this more subtle domestic violence, but still has the impact of a woman feeling small, afraid, avoiding conversations? Like, is that considered domestic violence?
Yeah, so basically they operate through patterns of surveillance, intimidation, isolation, destruction of property, threats, maybe threats of, I don't know if I can say it. Are we allowed to talk about whatever here?
Oh, anything goes.
Suicide.
Mhm.
That's a Okay. So threats of suicide, humiliation, maybe reproductive control, sexual coercion, manipulation of children. Maybe they destroy your birth control, stalking, financial restriction, stalking. A big one for me was sleep deprivation. Um, just like relentless demands for access, like abnormal access, like you should be able to have alone time. It's normal to be able to go back to your own spirit and hit the reset button. But this is like constant monitoring or belittling. My research has been presented in front of Swedish Parliament. If you know anything about POWs and what they've endured, it's basically the same tactics that they used on the POWs during the Korean War and the Duluth Power and Control Wheel. So it's all just manipulation tactics that sometimes can show up like care or even help, but it actually turns out to be ways to control their targeted victim.
So, do you think, and this is for both of you, because Velas, we've talked a lot about this. Do you think that an abuser, this person, is conscious of the, are all abusers conscious that they're abusing? I know there are people who are intentionally this way, but is it possible that there's someone out there who's doing these things and behaving like this that is not being, that the effect is malicious, but they're not thinking, I'm going to do these things? Because that's where I think a lot of people get confused and they say, well, his intention is this, or, whatever. I just want to clarify this because I think there is so much confusion when you're in the emotional mud of what abuse looks like. And it might not look like someone who's actively trying to be mean, but is just that is their behavior. And now you're totally confused about this. So,
Well,
does a monster always look like a monster?
I don't believe, I don't know the research on it, but I don't believe that it's possible that an abuser doesn't know, because if another person walks in the door, the story changes. if another person is there, they're not going to treat that person the same way. So how do they not know that this is the safe person that I get to beat up on? And you make a good point about the subtleties of abuse, because I think I commented last week in our episode that I said that not all men are brutally beating up women in domestic violence cases. And I'm like, I mean, I said it like they're not beating up women. And I'm like, no, I don't mean they're not, because they are. But that's not always what we see when we see domestic violence. We see the gaslighting, the oh no, you said this to me, or why didn't you tell me that? The accusations that feel like you're my partner, you should be communicating with me. But really what they're saying is you have to tell me every single detail of your life because I control you. And then the partner is like, wait, no, I do intend to share everything with you. I didn't realize that I hadn't told you, and it was literally 5 minutes ago, and I haven't had time yet, and I'm telling you now, and what are you talking about? And you get all up in your own head and defensive, and then that ignites them to be like, see, you look guilty. And it's just this dynamic where, why is there a power imbalance? It doesn't matter. That person is autonomous. Respect them. Let them have their private space. Let them have their nap, their reset, their whatever. But no, they have to control every aspect of your being, and it doesn't have to be violence. And
Okay, so that's a really good point. So it could be like you're both are saying, it's someone who is demanding more of you than you're willing to give. Where are you? Who are you talking to? You can't go out with your girlfriends. You don't feel like you can go on vacation with your friends. Your girl nights are either stalked, or now they make you feel guilty or bad for going out with your friends. So all of those would fall under what you guys are saying, is all of that would fall under sort of this coercive abuse. And then when you react to their pushing you, then you flip out, which is called reactive abuse, if I got that right. And then they have an opportunity to come at you and say, oh, you're the emotional one, that's not actually what I said, why are you taking it so seriously? So they'll always kind of flip it back on you.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Is that this kind of cycle?
What would you say, Marissa?
Well, reactive abuse isn't, personally, I don't think it's really a thing. I think I mean, that's what people are calling it. It can appear that way. It really is like how you described it, though, how it's the survivor is like, or the victim is literally at their breaking point, and the perpetrator does it on purpose to drive them to their breaking point, and will often, use videos, cameras to record it, to prove their point. The thing that happens, though, is that, like, we will give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps the perpetrator will blame this need to control because of childhood trauma. Like in my case, like they said that they had a cheating wife, and that's why they needed to know, that I couldn't go on girls' weekends. So I was like, okay, no girls' weekends because, he had a cheating ex-wife. So we give them the benefit of the doubt, and they do they target people who have boundaries that are very movable, somebody who's very empathetic, and it's not us, it's them. They look for somebody who would be an easy target, and unfortunately, nice people often are.
Yeah, we had this conversation on Monday morning, and you said they find us because we're broken, and rather than helping us sort of fix ourselves, this is their in. They know they can get to us because we're already sort of imbalanced.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's making me think of you is like a lot of these spiritual guys who read a lot of books about detachment and love, and use kind of weaponize some of these spiritual concepts of connection and detachment, even the way we grew up, Blas, and will use, and I've talked to so many women who've been in relationships with these, guys who meditate and sing Sanskrit mantras and talk about all this stuff, who are committing, some pretty intense coercive, not physical so much, but this emotional coercion. And I don't know, I've kind of just stayed away from, I've always been like, I don't want a guy who meditates and goes to kirtan because they're using some of these really high-minded concepts for manipulation, and I've seen so many women just kind of destroyed by it.
Greg asks, what do you think the connection, if any, is between narcissistic personalities and abuse, which I think is control based, and the controlling type is not always male, though I'm sure almost all physical abuse is men abusing women. Not necessarily. I mean, this is definitely an equal opportunity issue. But I do believe that narcissistic personalities, I just watched this phenomenal, what is her name? Dr. I'm gonna have to look her up and repost it, but she is an authority on narcissistic abuse. And she talks about different ways to, if you don't want
Dr.
to
Ramani.
end a relationship with a narcissist, if you can't, if they're your sister and you're like, I'm not burning down the family because my sister's a narcissist, so how to navigate that and what you can do that would be the least amount of escalation. So, I mean, I do think it's challenging to be in an, I listened to her scenarios and then asked myself how I would apply them. How would I handle that? In one scenario, she said that, this one person lived far away from her mother and sister. Her sister and mother were extremely narcissistic, and she would visit them only at holidays, and they would always behave inappropriately, buy her things she specifically doesn't need or want or use, and they won't listen to her. So she's now just like, I don't want to say given up, but her compromise is, I'm going to take it home, put it on, send lots of pictures, and send those pictures periodically so that she's telling them, thanks for your gift. Now, I don't think I could handle that. I think I would say, this isn't anything I would ever wear. Thank you so much. But these aren't my colors, so I definitely won't wear them, but I appreciate it. Thanks. Because I'm not interested in trying to fix you. I don't want you to have a fit about it. I'm only talking about me. This is what I need and what I want. And I appreciate you. Bye. I don't know how it would go. I don't know that dynamic. So she's doing whatever she can do to survive the relationship. And different people have to react in different ways when they're in a relationship with a narcissist. But anything that can escalate is going to be a trigger for them,
Well, exactly. And I think to his question too is, and Marissa, we want your opinion on it too, obviously. But I think that there's a high correlation between narcissistic personality disorders and abuse. These people are extremely self-centered, right? And they have no control or very little control over their emotion. It's like a 2-year-old child or 4-year-old child where the world just completely revolves around their inner chaos. And truthfully, I have someone who's close to me who's in an abusive relationship by a woman, and malignant type of narcissism. And this person cannot get out of that relationship. And I see it time and time again where they've been close to physical abuse. It hasn't escalated there entirely yet, but this is a very long-term relationship. So I think it's not always men abusing, but there is a high correlation between that. And it seems to be connected to at least the emotional abuse. I can't speak to the physical abuse, but from what I've seen, and the people that are in highly abusive relationships, these people have also been clinically diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder or even BPD.
I wonder how many abusers have been studied, tested, and found not to be narcissistic. I feel like in order to be abusive, I feel like it's a huge ingredient. What do you think, Marissa? Like, do you think you kind of have to be a narcissist in order to be able to abuse somebody? I mean, how selfish and horrible is that?
Or psychopath.
She's
I
frozen.
think well, I mean, when you are talking about like the brain, oh, I'm done.
You're frozen.
Yeah, you're.
Gosh. All right. Is that
There you are.
Yay.
For 1
I'm
second.
so sorry, guys. Should I go ahead and leave?
I need to get you to get Starlink. I'm joking. Yeah, I don't know.
I've never had this problem before. Is that better?
Yeah. Well, we can hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just moved my hotspot. So when you're talking about like the narcissistic brain, I found out that the part of the brain that controls memories and emotion is actually shrunken on sociopaths. So and that like the opposite effect happens to the victims. They actually have an enlarged amygdala. So the thing is that I think that, I mean, it really, it takes a certain type of person, it's not like a one-off incident that makes these people abusive. It's not just hitting. These people come from their core of feeling entitled to the world. And I do think that that's a huge reason why we have environmental problems, because people care, more about themselves than about the safety of others and the planet.
Well, there's an interesting study about rats, and I think we've talked about this before, how within a controlled environment or within a certain number, I think it's like 150 rats, the rats are loving, playful, they share resources, they are really cute and helpful to each other, and they build really cool communities. And then I forget the number, somebody can look this up for me. At some point, it crosses over this maximum threshold, and then they start fighting, they rape, they steal, they hurt each other, and it gets totally screwed up. So I think that there's something to say for like people who are so stressed and so there's such a resource debt. And not resources, I mean love, care, affection, paying attention, present, like all of the things, not just food and water, that are just creating a whole world of people who have these narcissistic wounds and just debilitate people in a way that is, now we're seeing so much violence, so much stealing of resources, so much of what we see kind of in the rat community, which is just, I think is so interesting.
Yeah, we had talked about that before, and I think basically the gist of it is that in small communities it's easier to handle yourself and society and expectations and whatever, but because our communities are growing internationally, because we have access to so much now through technology, that things are more stressful and we haven't learned how to navigate them yet, and so we think we're deprived.
And we can't address exactly, and we can't address people's real needs. Like, why is all of a sudden there are so many narcissists and psychopaths? Is it an environmental thing? Is it a lack of resources? And what kind of resources are we lacking?
I actually think we're just naming it now. I don't think it's new. This has always been there. I think we're just naming it. We now, gaslighting is a new word, but it's been around for, this is not a new thing.
There actually has been an influx because of the 2008 housing crisis.
Oh, really?
The American Psychology Association, or I forget, I think it was the APA that put out an article that they estimated that there would be an increase in serial killers and narcissistic personality disorder because of the housing crisis. Because when you restrict a child's food and they're eating out of garbage cans, it changes their brain. When you have housing instability, it causes a different type of trauma to the child. I mean, we talked about the ACEs study, I think, very briefly in New York. Plus, did we talk about that?
Yeah.
That's the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. So different traumas, sexual trauma that causes perhaps obesity, where housing instability causes maybe other types of inflammation in the body. We know that sexual trauma can actually be as a child can cause children to experience what we now call it was called multiple personality disorder, but now it's DID.
Right.
Dissociative identity disorder, where the psyche fractures. What's that? Yeah. So they actually have like different they have like different physiological disorders, like even different eyesight. Maybe one personality can see without glasses and the other can't, or one personality has high blood pressure, or one diabetes. So they're just learning about trauma, or maybe they're just releasing it. Like you said, maybe they've known about it for quite some time and now they're just exposing it. But for sure, childhood trauma has a huge impact on our health, and that is we already know that.
So this is interesting, and I want to get to Greg's question in just a second. So we're not saying, I mean, obviously some people may be born with psychopathy or these personality disorders, but it sounds like it's not that people are born with these things. These are wounds that happen in early childhood where they sort of get like knotted up. I call it a trauma knot, where now it blocks the brain from being able to spark in new and healthy ways, and it just creates this wound that expresses itself in this way. Because there's some times where I've literally, again, there's a couple people in my life that are in these really intense relationships, and I'm like, these people act like maniacal 3-year-olds. You can tell it's not like a mature person just being a piece of POS. This is like a 3-year-old who's completely out of control of their emotions, has no concept of the disruption they're causing, and it's just absolutely insane. But because they're an adult, you're like, it's either like the 3-year-old like is a tyrannical little tantrum thrower, but then when it becomes an adult, it's like horrifying and so much more destructive. But that's what I feel like when I'm looking at these people and trying to help in these situations, that they have these wounds that happened in childhood and then never got addressed. So the question really is, if that's the case, I don't know, I might be full of it, but are these things healable? And is that hope what's keeping people stuck in these relationships?
Greg says becomes president.
Yes, exactly.
So bad.
Yeah, do you think there's any redemption for these kind of people?
I think that the first step is acknowledging it and being aware of it. But I feel like I looked up one time because someone close to me, I was told, was a narcissist, and I didn't want to accept it because they're close to me. So I immediately did a deep dive into, but is it curable? And so if they can become aware of behavior and they choose to modify it and acknowledge it, I don't know if it's possible I don't think it's possible for somebody with DID to just be like, I know there are people that have functioning lives out there with DID. They're living their life and they're married and they exist. And I know that there are plenty of trauma survivors who probably have lists of diagnoses that have never been talked about or addressed, and they also don't harm anyone. They just exist with their trauma, and there's probably a lot of negativity in their head.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they take it out on others. So I don't know. What do you, Marissa? Go on more. You know too much for me to be talking right now.
There is no current treatment to cure somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. But with that being said, I'm very interested in the 1960 to 1963 Concord prison experiment, where they used plant medicine, i.e. psilocybin mushrooms, and the recidivism rate they anticipated was going to be 25%, but it actually was 64%. So it was like more than doubled. And the prisoners, the participants in this study, they experienced, the results of this Concord prison experiment was off the rails. And I guess Kennedy, he stopped the test, but basically the prisoners, none of them returned to prison because of the same crime that they committed in order, for what they got in there, or what got them in there. But they did, like, there was a couple that had parole violations and maybe like a couple that had new crimes. But the Concord prison experiment used plant medicine, and I know that it does something to the amygdala because it does increase empathy. So I would love to get my hands on some magic mushrooms and do a case study on on narcissistic personality disorder and the amygdala.
I wonder if there's people doing stuff
But other
like
than
that
that,
right
no,
now, because there's ketamine therapy, there's ayahuasca, there's all kinds of different styles of plant medicine that does seem to be healing people with addiction.
That's what microdosing is. I mean, people, do that and have the ability to. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. I had this discussion with my father the other day, and he's like, I don't like psychedelics or whatever. I was like, I mean, it's plants. You choose chemical plants, and he's like, okay, good point. But, he doesn't like the psychedelics.
The stigma. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that I've done, I microdosed a few times and I did a hero journey a couple years ago. I felt the effects of it for a year and a half. I could feel the little fungi in me for a very long time. But that's
is it something you have to do again?
I do not. I did it with a guide and it was very purposeful. I had 3 intentions, 3 things that I needed help seeing clearly, and I did all the things. It was too much of a dose for me. I didn't really probably need to go that where I went because it wasn't totally effective. But I have felt that in the last few 10, 12, maybe 14 months, I'll do like a little microdose now and then when I'm like painting or something like that. And I do notice a shift in my own psychology. So I do and can have depression. I can go into these really weird dips and I can pull myself out now without anything, but I have fewer of them since doing the full hero journey. Now I would do it again, but with someone who was very specific in helping, because I have a couple of very specific points, like trauma knots in myself that I know of that I want to untangle. And I've tried everything else. So I'm willing to try something else. So I think it's helped minimize negative thinking and the frequency of my dips.
Okay, Marissa, what you just said. So Greg asked, or Greg commented that there was a 60 Minutes story about PTSD and veterans using psychedelics to heal. And I was going to say that PTSD is 2.5 times more likely in DV survivors than combat veterans. And that's the thing. I actually heard about PTSD in trauma survivors before I heard about PTSD in veterans. And because I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was 20. And I wasn't really aware. I'm not saying that it wasn't a spoken of thing in the veteran community, but I was like, and when I was diagnosed, I was like, okay, that seems reasonable. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Sure, sure. And then I heard it described as veterans. And I was like, what? Because I assumed that veterans would be suffering far more than me. And then I was told that no, probably not. And that's a weird thing to say because I still have a hard time thinking that my trauma, and trauma is not measured in a linear way. It's not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a trauma is trauma and it's so relative to your psychology.
But even when I'm with other survivors, I'm like, I'm honored to be here and I don't feel like I belong in this space because these people have suffered so much and I'm fine. And I'm not fine, but I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like I'm fine. So I don't worry so much about myself because I feel like I have a good control of my head and my mind and my life. And I sit there with these other amazing survivors and I'm just like, wow, I'm just blown away. You know, when I read books that were written by trauma survivors, I'm like, how did they go through that? And then when other people hear my story, they say the same things I say about other people. And so I'm like,
exactly.
all right, I guess I still have a hard time identifying myself like that. But to Marissa's point, yeah, I mean, domestic violence and child abuse is creating the next society. So we're going to have to brace ourselves because it is rampant right now. And whatever the cause of it, you know, whatever society has done to bring us to this point, it's pretty bad. But I do think that it's good that people like Marissa are doing all of this research and exposure so that we can at least have the words and hopefully find the tools to be able to fix it, whether it's magic mushrooms or whatever it is. But
yeah, I always say if you can't name it, you can't fix it. And so, or you can't see it, can't name it, can't fix it. And this is why I think I want to go back to Greg's thing too here is like now there's so much exposure to like reality. There's so many people who are coming out and talking about the abuse they suffered, whether, you know, whatever the age of the person is. And we're looking at kind of a crisis with men. Like finally, we're able to talk about this in a big way. Men have the bulk of the responsibility for physical domestic violence. There's statistics and stuff all over the place. So Greg's question is, what is the impact of bro culture has on young men and women in this abuse culture also? Like what is this bro culture doing to young men who are then having these relationships with women? And equally, what's bro culture doing to young girls who think that it's normal? Marissa, can you talk to that at all?
Yeah, actually, I think that we can see bro culture pretty well in law enforcement. The police departments across the United States are the biggest gang that there is, and the police families and law enforcement families. So that bro culture is it looks a lot like, call it himpathy, himpathy. And I just think that it's looking after your bro more than what is right, and giving a pass maybe on some behavior that like I said before, like these are not just one-off incidents. Yeah, it's a series of events that happen, and it might seem very subtle to one person, but you're not around that person all the time, and it's entirely possible there's 12 things that happened in that one day that you don't even know about, that were potentially unsafe incidents for their targeted and individual.
Mhm. I would say that we grew up in a bro culture, and it's different, right? It's not the cop gang, or it's not the, whatever CEO gang, right? But it's the culture where men are, instead of protecting like they say they're so good at and providing, they're protecting each other. The priests were protecting the other priests who abuse little boys. Cops are protecting the cops that are abusing their families and are abusive in there. There's this locker room culture, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different names. And I think it's so detrimental to the men's movement of these guys who are saying, we want to protect, we want to serve, we want to be the good guy, but then they're protecting their buddy who's doing all these terrible things. And so I think it has it, and it affirms that it's okay, that it's cool because it's your buddy, or you don't want to say anything because you don't want to mess it up. So it's abuse sympathy, which I kind of look at bro culture as abuse sympathizers, which I don't know if that's too intense to say.
100%. And go back to that, Marissa,
I do think that
because
it was like,
they they are one of the biggest
it's a
obstacles.
culture. It like, so basically,
You hit the nail on the
yeah,
head.
so
Go on.
basically I think that it's been a devolvement of the culture, and a conditioning, because the men, in case you haven't gotten the memo, they're actually not the protectors of women. They're actually men and women. Um, so I believe they have hijacked the language, the uh, medicine, not just the medical system, but medicine, schools, and like, for example, the word gossip. I just found out this morning, in case you watch Red Pill RX on Instagram. She's really good. She goes over a lot of the medical language, verbiage that. Anyway, so there was the word gossip. Originally, what came from the word godsip, and it meant like women would get together and talk about health and things that were positive, and they changed it over time to mean something very negative. So I think that they've actually, and when I say they, I mean, like, there's like this hidden subculture, that we all are, I think we all kind of feel it, that controls the narrative a little bit, and it's up to us to find out that those words are made up, and it's just a gaslight. It's just a gaslight.
But back to what I was saying a minute ago is that police very much stand in the way of victims reporting, and then victims are blamed for not reporting. Victims are blamed for um, filing a false report because bro couldn't have done that. Victims are then charged for being a participant in the crime, even though they're the victim. You know, there are women in jail all across this country who stopped their abuser and are now in jail. But you're not in jail. Thank you for not being in jail. But I know, but like it's rarely looked at as a self-defense when it's a woman.
Say that one more time. The last.
Yeah, I reported stalking.
Go on. She'll explain.
I reported stalking. And on report there were 2 victims, no perpetrator.
So you reported that somebody was stalking you and they decided that both of you were the victims.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like I have another police report too where there's also I can't remember which one this was. I think it was the rape one, and the officer listed 2 victims, perpetrator.
Wow. I think that is such a categorically insane, completely insane thing that is going on in our society. It doesn't make sense. It's so illogical. And beyond that, it's unbearably disrespectful. And I think that if there was a sense of urgency in me and something that I really wanted to advocate for, it would be precisely that. If someone, and that to me tells me we're in a narcissistic society, because that's exactly what a narcissist would do. A narcissist would say, oh, that may have happened, or maybe it didn't happen that way. Or, oh, you saying I raped you? Well, maybe you raped me, or maybe you're the one that caused it, or maybe you deserve, like, whatever. That's what a narcissistic person would say. They would flip it, get defensive, deflect it back, or maybe say, well, that's not what really happened. And then, record you freaking out because you're kind of like, wait a minute, that did happen. And so I think fundamentally we're in a very narcissistic culture. And I think we have been for a really long time because perpetrators have not been held responsible. One of the things that they say builds a narcissistic personality is a child who had no consequences. So we have a system who has no consequences, and we keep perpetuating it. And bro culture doesn't do anybody any favors because they protect each other. So we're like in crazy making world right now in our emotional evolution. And I think we're just at a really hard point. At least we can name it. But I feel like everybody's just insane because nothing is changing. Except for we can finally name it. We can finally talk about it. And the problem, I think, with bro culture is now a lot of these guys are saying things like, oh, where are all these angry women? Why are all these women angry? Like there's this angry woman thing. And you're like, dude, for hundreds of thousands of years, you've been hurting my sisters and me maybe, and then telling us it's our fault. And you have no consequence. So yeah, we're pissed off and we have social media now and we can stand up for ourselves.
And social media is the reason that we're able to have these platforms, because before social media, nobody ever was listening to us.
Nope.
Nobody.
And it's all around the world. We know that this is happening to women in China, in India, and all over the world. We're having a collective experience of saying, I see you. So, it has nothing to do with religion or anything. This is happening.
Marissa, do you remember the name of the girl we were talking about? This is a current case right now. This man took his girlfriend, no, they're married, out to the desert in Nevada and kept her there for 7 months and tortured her. I forget her name. She has been trying to get the police to arrest him. There's video footage of almost all of this, and they refuse to arrest him.
On what grounds? What are they saying? I'm just curious what they're trying to.
They won't even return. She calls them. All of it is like, she has showcased this on Instagram, on TikTok. She'll be on a video live calling them saying, hi, just want to check to see what the progress on the case is. And I think that this detective, it's been sent to this detective. So then she calls and leaves 10 messages for them. Hi, this is, such and such a date. I'm trying you again. It's been this many months. Can you please tell me if there's any progress, if anything is being done? And she's like hiding out because this man is still out there. She has a protective order, but what good are those?
Yeah.
So,
well, I would say that I just wanted to say also that I've seen this happen with someone I know and love who's very, very important to me. And I've seen her go through this since she was 15 years old. She has been in an absolutely horrifying relationship. The cops have been called so many times. Real, physical, nose broken, baby or belly kicked. Other people in her family have been abused by this person, stolen from, burnt, pushed down, punched. Cops have been called. She's still with him. She still can't get out of this situation. She can't find her way, which is another question we want to ask you. And the last time this happened, someone else had said, hey, like, this kid is going to end up dead. Why aren't you guys doing anything? And the cops shrug and say, that's not our fucking department. Like, what the fuck is the wrong with these people?
Yeah.
And at some point, this kid is probably going to end up dead. And that's the truth. And then everybody's going to say, oh. This has been going on for almost 12 years now. And law enforcement hasn't done jack shit. And so I feel for the person you're talking about.
And that's a classic example of the bro mentality.
Yep. And even his mother protects him. This is the part that feels like such a betrayal to other women, is that his mother protects him. And so it's
Women
just, you
carry
go,
the water.
What are you going to do? How do you solve this? Not just in one person, but systemically. I don't know. I'm at a loss for that.
What, Marissa, so was that your question, Vanessa, was that what do you say to them?
Well, it's when a person like that, like, how do you help somebody, and can you help someone who's in that? And what are things that you can say to that person that might get them to sense that there's actually something safe? There's a safe place for them to go to.
Well, every situation is different. And I know that, so I don't know if I actually make GPTs for victims of domestic violence. Nobody knows how to get out of that situation except for the survivor. And that's why I think it's such a difficult situation, because nobody is in that room with the victim and the perpetrator, and nobody knows this, because the abuse is catered to specifically just for the victim. So like the perpetrator will like get in, that's why it's so insidious. They'll get inside the mind. Maybe it's a good time to bring up the list, Vilas, what we were talking about earlier. There will actually study the victim. And my perpetrator wrote a list about me in order to manipulate me into a committed relationship before the first date. It was a list about a dozen traits that my perpetrator had studied about me on ways to, quote unquote, get in there. That's what he said on one of the line items that he made about me. He said that I care about my family and friends, and in parentheses, it says, how do I get in there? So I think that it really is catered to the individual. And that's why I've made these free GPTs for survivors that will help them and their attorney to write motions for restraining orders to get out of their relationship. It's also a really good, to me, it's a really good soundboard because you're talking to a computer, you're not talking to a person. And the element of shame, I feel, has kind of been lifted because you're not talking to somebody who's going to judge you. You know, you can say, and it's not your fault, by the way. It's never the victim's fault. The causation is the perpetrator. So there is no victim blaming at all in any of the GPTs, and I can
you
send
post
that
those?
link to you all. It's called the
Yeah,
Perpetratorology.
Yeah, she'll send all of that.
great, because we'll write a follow-up to this with some of the other resources, any of the resources that you have, because I feel like the hardest thing is when someone knows they're in a dangerous place, they're so attached to that person out of familiarity and the trauma bond that it's so easy to say, like, well, why didn't that person just leave? Like from the outside perspective, because you think you'd have a survival
I
instinct,
think that
but
that's
it's
the
almost
misunderstanding right there, though. I I think that's the misunderstanding right there, though, that you're assuming that they're going to know that they're in danger when in fact that they won't know that they're in danger. That's the whole issue is you always think this person loved me at some point and couldn't do this to me, but in fact they do. They feel entitled to all of you. They like you are theirs. You're an object to them.
And
I
you
think that
got to
there
realize that I hate the word victim, but I'm sorry, I'm going to use it. You got to realize that the victim in this scenario is probably the most innocent and genuine of the two, let's say, and isn't malicious in that way, and maybe has learned some survival tactics. So there might be some spot to point to when the cop arrives. Yeah, but she did this, But for the sake of my argument, the victim can't imagine being that evil. So how can they identify with that kind of evil? Like, no, oh my God, they must be having the worst kind of day. And I clearly have pissed them off. And they can't fathom the level of narcissism and behavior that a brutal abuser is using, because they can't bring themselves to that level of disgusting behavior. I'm trying
yeah,
not to use gendered words because I'm trying
yeah.
not to make it about men, even though men are the only people I can see in my head in the picture.
Sadly, I know a woman or two who, well, Lakshmi, one of the women, one of our teachers
Yeah, but
was,
Lakshmi was abusive to children. We're talking about maybe men and women who are
yeah.
on the same
Okay, that's
level,
fair.
who are
Hmm.
equally strong. Lakshmi
Yeah.
was a full adult beating up on little children.
Yeah.
So in that case, yeah, sure. I wore a shirt way too big for me, and I seemed to not, be able to keep it
At
on.
least we know you have clothes on. Unlike last week, we
The
weren't quite
Gabby
sure if I had clothes on.
the Gabby Petito case.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Gabby Petito case was a really good example of this because it was video documented how he was able to flip it when the cops got there, and it was bro culture that they were able to flip it, and Brian was able to be put up in a women's domestic abusive shelter using domestic abusive nonprofit funds
What?
to
I
put
didn't
a
know
roof
about
over
this.
his head. And poor Gabby, Yeah, poor Gabby had to sleep in the car that night all alone. They separated them, and yeah, I mean, it was all very well documented. They flip it, but I think that we're becoming more and more educated on what coercive control looks like. I was very new learning about coercive control when the Gabby Petito case hit the news. But I know that the first time that I realized that there was something that she probably didn't believe in her because she was doing this pod, that to me was a huge red flag, and I was like, she's in an abusive relationship, because our relationships are supposed to enlighten us, and they're supposed to elevate us. If they're not elevating us, then what's going on? Then you're confused, and if you're confused, you're
Yeah.
probably in an abusive relationship.
I think that's the hard part, is when there's confusion. Is this person a bully? Was that a reasonable thing to demand or ask, even if it's not bruises, right? So coercive control can be someone who's like managing your time and every activity and demanding that you give more or do more than you actually want. And I think that's the part that so many women float in, because also women are conditioned to dismiss themselves. I was conditioned to dismiss if I was sick or didn't feel good or I was sad, or all the emotions as a kid. And so I have learned to dismiss things. And now, in certain situations, when I am dismissed, I lose my mind. I go, why am I still dealing with this? And I think it's because we have learned to dismiss ourselves. It's very easy to be and stay in relationships where it doesn't look like a bruise, it's not a name calling, but there is a constant dismissal of your being and what you need or what you're feeling. And that can be abusive also. So I think women have a hard time going, am I in an abusive relationship, and admitting it, because we're so used to doing it to ourselves.
Yeah, abusers look for targets that are used to pushing down their own comfort for other people. So they want somebody who is like a caretaker, or somebody whose boundaries are easily malleable, somebody who's very driven by people pleasing qualities. We are taught to be nurturing people as women. And
Mhm.
so that's why we are targeted more often than not.
So, what are some things that you suggest that can help women tap into their back into their self trust and back into their boundary setting? And what are some tools that they can use when those boundaries feel like they're being crossed, that they can flip it without obviously being reactively abusive? What are some of the things that we can tell women right now to help them, like a checklist? What are some things that you would say? We have a connection.
So I really like Canada's data, and we have another connection issue.
It's
Yeah.
okay. We're gonna
Am I
Okay.
okay
We're
again?
gonna work with it.
Sorry.
see if you can answer this, but then I do want to just say, I want to have you back, but we're gonna get your Wi-Fi issue fixed before we have you back. But because I know that there's so much more that Marissa wants to tell us, and we're already over an hour and 15 minutes. But answer the question: what are the things that you want women who are questioning, who are like wondering, am I in uh, a situation that I need to be concerned about? What would you say? What's the checklist?
Yeah. And then what can they do about it to just give themselves
So,
some protection and space?
well, I did upload that link to the perpetratorology GPT, and you can upload text, emails, and even full depositions. And this GPT will be able to analyze for patterns of abusive behaviors. But some really good things to look at is, so coercive control is a liberty crime. Is your autonomy being slowly diminished? Is he asking, for you to be isolated? Is he questioning you about long time family friends, or family? Why are you spending time with them? Is he occupying a lot of your time? Also, these abusive relationships, in like 90, I think it's like 98% of them, is financial abuse. Financial abuse can be found in the majority of all domestic abusive relationships, whether it be either, just money in general, or using your credit score to buy property. The misnomer of gold digger, I think, of women has really been flipped on its head. That the real gold diggers are men who are forcing women for, for labor,
Mm-hmm.
unpaid labor.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. Okay, so, and then what if a woman is sitting around and she all of a sudden has this awareness of, oh shit, I think I'm in an abusive relationship, but it's not that bad. I don't have smacks. He hasn't called me a name, but I feel like I'm really afraid to talk to him. We're gonna just get in another fight, or he's gonna, and like these things. Is this like, what would they do? They go to the GBT and ask some questions and get some affirmation, and then if someone discovers they're actually physically like, this is really scary and I want to get out, what are like two or three things they can do?
If your listener doesn't take anything else from this podcast, I would like your listeners to take the advice that I'm going to say right now. In response to that question, leave quietly. Do not share your strategy, your plan, share nothing. Pick up and go. Your life is more important than any pet or anything. You need to find shelter, safe shelter somewhere else. Leave quietly. Do not tell your abuser any of your plans, and, just block and do not go back, because once you expose your abuser, once your abuser catches on that you're onto them, they will never forgive you. And once you go back, it'll get worse. It always gets worse. It will never get better. It will never get better.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I do hope that as we grow and talk with women around the world, that they know that we can be a safe place to come and get support, resources, put them in the right direction. But I love what you're saying, is just to be quiet about it, because that can only devolve into some kind of argument or negotiation. And then she's convinced to stay one more night, and who knows what will happen with that one more night.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I mean,
I know
if we
that.
just look at like the Shanann Watts case and Chris Watts.
Go ahead. Sorry. It's the lag. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry about the lag.
That's okay.
Yeah, so Shanann and Chris Watts were talking, and ended their marriage, and it devolved into him murdering the entire family.
I don't know about this case. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what's going to trigger them. And women have been walking delicately on eggshells for so long. And just because we know that the consequence is death, not hurt feelings, death.
Yeah.
So,
When I was going through my divorce, there was a period of time where the threat of suicide was being put on me multiple times. And breaking into my email and sending out a pretty scary letter to everybody in my email. And I had a couple girlfriends call me and say, Vanessa, this is where people get murdered. get out of this now. And that shook me. My car had been broken into 4 times. 4 times. The roof had been cut on my car. I had to replace it. Things were stolen out of my car. I was followed. I was tracked. There was some really scary stuff that happened. And I don't talk about it a lot because I hate the word victim in any way, shape, for me. And I feel like I've triumphed over a lot of stuff, but I was actually scared for my life for a long time, and scared for like just someone being able to invade my world, and also being threatened with, I'm going to kill myself if you do this. I'd never encountered that kind of violence before, and it was terrifying. Unfortunately, I had a big community, but it was that phone call from like 3 girlfriends that day that warned me, Vanessa, this is the stuff that leads to murder. You need to get out right now and be clear, or clear your, whatever. And that was terrifying.
Okay.
So there's
go on.
The homicide timeline, that's 8 stages. And then there's also the Mosaic threat assessment. Those are also 2 really good resources for ladies to understand that there are 8 stages in the homicide timeline. The first stage is allegations of abuse, of a history of abuse. And the 8th stage is homicide. So there's several stages in between the first and the 8th stage where one of them is, the 3rd stage is coercive control. So that understanding coercive control, that can really help alleviate, some lingering questions that anybody might have about their own experience if they're feeling confused in their relationship.
Well, thank you for that. I think that'll be something that'll be helpful to share with other women, and there's other men obviously that have been through abuse. So this is a resource for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that, there's plenty of evidence. I'm not making a general statement here saying this is mostly perpetrated by men, but there are women who, just like there are, children who were boys that got married, but it's mostly a girl problem. But I really want to
men can absolutely be victims too.
Yeah.
Right. I really, really want to have you back because I know you want to talk about Darbo, and I know you want to talk about parental alienation, and I want
come back next week.
Yeah, but we got to get you some Wi-Fi, so we're going to talk about that. I would really love to have you back. You're a wealth of knowledge, and this is really important shit that we have to talk about.
Absolutely.
So, we'll connect and figure out our next week if you'd like to come back. So
thank you so much. Absolutely. I would love it.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us today and talking. And everybody who's listening, thank you so much for hanging out with us, for your great questions. And I know Nipana was with us today. Greg, thank you so much. And please join us next Wednesday at 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern, 1. It's usually at 4 and 1 Pacific, but
today we were a little late. I had a client meeting and they didn't show up. So I was like, darn it. Anyways.
Before we go, I want to send a special little shout out to Shauna.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're very welcome. And we're going to see you again next week.
Thank you.
But I want to send a little
sounds good. See you soon.
Shout out to Shauna, who is one of our dear friends from childhood, and her mom passed away last week. And so we just wanted she's an avid listener and follower of our little podcast here. So I just wanted to.
And we've been friends since we were 10 years old, maybe younger. Yep. So we love you, Shauna. Thank you so much for just always being part of this and sending you lots of love. I know how hard it is to lose a mom. So just sending you a lot of love.
All right. We will see you next week.
See you all next week.
Peace and love.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.